"I am looking for a real man," Diogenes of Sinope shouted, thrusting a flickering bronze lamp into the faces of wealthy Athenian teenagers while the sun was still high in the sky. He wasn't looking for a person, he was mocking a generation of soft, perfumed shadows who looked like men but lacked the bone-deep structure of an actual human soul. This wasn't some eccentric performance art. It was a diagnostic report of a dying culture that mirrors our own digital decay with terrifying precision. You see the same glassy eyes today on every subway car and in every darkened bedroom. The history of human formation is a closed loop, and 300 years before a carpenter from Nazareth was born, the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch of Athens, was the only laboratory attempting to break that cycle. Most people tell you Stoicism was a gentle philosophy for bearded old men to feel calm. That is a sanitized corporate lie designed to sell journals to people who are afraid of their own shadows. The truth is far more violent. For a young man between 18 and 25, entering Zeno's circle wasn't an academic choice. It was a total demolition of the self. Picture a 20-year-old Athenian named Cleon. He arrives at the porch with soft hands and a mind filled with the gossip of the agora. He expects a lecture. Instead, he finds Zeno of Citium, a man with a face like weathered granite and skin darkened by the relentless Greek sun. Zeno doesn't offer him a seat or a syllabus. He hands him a pot of hot lentil soup and tells him to carry it through the most crowded aristocratic district of the city. To you, that sounds like a joke. To a high-status youth in 300 BC, it was social suicide. The soup would spill, his expensive robes would be stained. The elites would laugh at the philosopher's mule. This was the first gate. If you couldn't handle the sting of a stranger's laughter, you were useless to the school. We are embarking on a journey back to this brutal forge, and I'm asking you to walk this dark path of knowledge with me by hitting that subscribe button now. Do not imagine this was a school of books. It was a school of friction. Zeno knew that the world was about to collapse. The Macedonian Empire was fracturing, and chaos was the new currency. He wasn't teaching mindfulness, he was building psychological bunkers. Think about the timing of our own era. We are living through the same structural rot, the same loss of gravity. If you want to see how they actually built men who could watch their world burn without blinking, pay attention. But let's be clear, this isn't for the fragile. Subscribe only if you have the stomach to watch until the end, because the reality of Zeno's training makes modern hustle culture look like a nursery rhyme. They didn't start with logic, they started with the body. A young initiate was stripped of his fine linen and forced to wear a coarse, single-layered cloak, regardless of whether the winter winds were biting off the Aegean or the summer heat was melting the lead in the rooftops. They ate raw food, they slept on the ground. This wasn't about being poor, it was about being untouchable. If you need nothing, you can't be bribed. If you fear no discomfort, you can't be coerced. The mainstream narrative wants you to believe these men were cold robots. Look at the sweat on their brows. Feel the grit of the dust in their throats. They weren't removing emotion. They were cauterizing the wounds where weakness used to leak out. Every morning at dawn, they gathered not to debate but to be interrogated. Zeno would demand to know how they had failed the day before. Did they flinch when a horse nearly trampled them? Did they look with lust at a passing merchant's gold? The interrogation was relentless. It was an assault on the ego that lasted years. You think you're disciplined because you went to the gym for 40 minutes? These youths were training to maintain a state of total immunity to the chaotic pulses of the lizard brain, 24 hours a day, under the threat of public humiliation. The process was designed to kill the boy so the man could finally breathe. It was a systematic stripping of every lie the Athenian society had whispered into their ears since birth. They were being prepared for the cyclical return of darkness, and that darkness is exactly what we need to examine next. Think about the exact moment you lost your temper this morning. Was it a slow-moving car, a cold cup of coffee, a digital notification that didn't go your way? Now look at the marble floor of the Stoa. Imagine standing there, your feet bare on the grit, while a man who has lost everything stares into your eyes and asks you why your soul is so cheap that a minor inconvenience can buy your peace. The modern version of this philosophy sold to you in glossy paperbacks is a direct insult to the magnitude of their sacrifice. They aren't life hacks. They are survival protocols for the end of the world. Look at the way a man holds his jaw when he's been told his children are dead. That is the visual language of the original Stoics. Not a smiling influencer talking about mindset while sitting in a temperature-controlled studio. You've been lied to about the price of entry. The interrogation didn't stop at the gates. It followed them into the marketplace. Zeno would force his students to carry a pot of lentil soup through the crowded streets of Athens. It sounds trivial until you see the visual of a high-born youth, dressed in rags, trying to navigate a mocking crowd while hot liquid sloshes onto his feet. When the student tried to hide the pot under his cloak out of shame, Zeno would smash it with his staff. The soup would run down the boy's legs, hot and sticky, as the crowd erupted in laughter. Look at the red flush of humiliation on that boy's face. That is the ego dying in real time. It's not a metaphor. It's the literal destruction of the social mask. If you can't handle soup on your shins, how will you handle the executioner's blade on your neck? This is the question the mainstream narrative avoids because it doesn't sell books. It doesn't fit into a morning routine. It's messy, it's embarrassing, and it's physically demanding. Now look closer at the interrogation. It wasn't just about public shame. It was about the microscopic observation of the self. Picture a man sitting in the dark, watching his own pulse. He isn't meditating to feel zen. He's hunting for the first sign of a tremor. He's looking for the moment a thought turns into an emotion, and an emotion turns into a cage. You there, watching this, do you even know where your thoughts come from? Or are you just a leaf blown by the wind of every headline and every insult? The Stoics were obsessed with the mechanics of the impression. They saw a visual object, a gold coin, a beautiful face, a threatening spear, and they stripped it of its value before it could enter the mind. They saw the gold and called it yellow earth. They saw the purple robe of the emperor and called it sheep's wool soaked in the blood of a shellfish. This isn't abstract thinking, it's a sensory deconstruction of the physical world. It's the ability to look at a luxury car and see nothing but a pile of rusting metal and exploited labor. If you can't see the object for what it literally is, you are its slave. But here's where the interrogation turns aggressive. The history books want you to think this was all about being a good person. That's a total sanitization of a much darker reality. These men were being forged into weapons of endurance. Look at the geography of the time. The Mediterranean was a slaughterhouse. Plagues, shipwrecks, and sudden enslavement were the baseline of existence. You didn't practice stoicism to be better at work. You practiced it so that when the soldiers arrived at your door to take your family, you could stand in the doorway and not crumble. You could speak with a clear voice while the steel was at your throat. Think about the physical weight of that responsibility. It's heavy, it's cold, and it's entirely missing from the modern conversation. You might think you're different. You might think your modern problems require a softer touch. That is a delusion designed to keep you weak. The biology of fear hasn't changed in 2,000 years. The chemical dump of adrenaline when you're fired from a job is the same as when a trireme was sinking. The difference is the training. We have replaced the coarse cloak with weighted blankets and the interrogation with self-care. We have swapped the hard ground for ergonomic chairs, and we wonder why we are the most anxious generation in history. The reality is that comfort is a slow-acting poison. It atrophies the soul until the smallest gust of wind knocks the whole structure over. Zeno knew this. He saw it in the crumbling morale of Athens. He saw men who were giants of intellect but infants of character. He decided to fix it by introducing the element of friction. Look at the dust on the road. Look at the calluses on the palms of a man who has spent the night hauling water just to prove he doesn't need a servant. This is the interrogation of your own lifestyle. Every convenience you own is a hook in your skin. The more you have, the more directions you can be pulled in. The mainstream narrative tells you to manifest more. The Stoa tells you to see how much you can lose without losing yourself. It's a subtractive process. It's the sculptor chipping away at the marble until only the essence remains. And what remains isn't a happy person in the way you understand happiness. It's something much more dangerous. It's a person who cannot be controlled. Ask yourself right now, what is the one thing you are terrified of losing? Your phone? your reputation, your comfort. That thing is your master. It owns you. It dictates your mood and your choices. The Stoic initiate was taught to visualize that thing being destroyed every single morning. They didn't just think about it, they felt the loss. They smelled the smoke of their burning house. They felt the cold of the grave. They did this until the fear lost its grip. They were interrogating their own attachments until the attachments broke. It's a violent mental act. It's a total war against the instinct to cling to the temporary. And if you think that sounds extreme, you haven't been paying attention to the state of the world. The darkness isn't coming. It's already here, hidden behind the neon lights and the digital noise. The only question is whether you have the armor to survive it, or if you're still just a boy in a linen robe, waiting for someone to tell you everything will be okay. Look at the way the sun hits the columns of the Stoa Poikile. The shadows are long, sharp, and unforgiving. This wasn't a classroom, it was a laboratory for the human spirit. When Zeno stood before his students, he didn't look like a philosopher. He looked like a man who had survived a shipwreck and decided he didn't need the ship. His skin was leathered. His eyes were focused on a point 3 inches behind your skull. When he asked a question, it wasn't a prompt for a debate. It was a demand for an accounting. He wanted to know why you were still vibrating with the energy of the world outside. He wanted to know why the noise of the market was still echoing in your ears. The mainstream narrative would have you believe that these men were trying to find balance. Balance is for people who are afraid of falling. The Stoics weren't looking for balance, they were looking for gravity. They wanted to be the thing that the world circled around, not the thing being tossed in the orbit of others. Think about the timing of a collapse. It happens in an instant. A market crashes, a war begins, a heart stops. In those moments, balance is a joke. You need a core of lead. You need to be the person who, when everyone else is screaming, is looking for the nearest exit or the sharpest blade. Look at the hands of the people around you. They are gripping their devices, their drinks, their steering wheels. They are holding on for dear life to a world that is already slipping away. Now look at the Stoic. His hands are open, not because he is weak, but because he has nothing to lose. This is the ultimate threat to any power structure. A man who wants nothing cannot be bought. A man who fears nothing cannot be intimidated. The interrogation was designed to find the cracks in that armor. Zeno would push and push until he found the nerve. He would find the one thing you still cared about, your family's name, your physical beauty, your intellectual pride, and he would grind it into the dirt. He would make you realize that your pride is just a story you tell yourself to avoid the truth of your own insignificance. This is the part they don't show you in the motivational videos. They don't show the tears. They don't show the long nights of hunger. They don't show the absolute isolation of realizing that your friends and family are living in a dream world while you are finally, painfully awake. The interrogation was a divorce from the collective hallucination of society. It was the realization that the honors, the titles, and the wealth of Athens were just toys for children. And you were being asked to put away the toys. You think you're ready for that? You think you can handle the silence that comes when you stop seeking validation? Look at the flickering wick of an oil lamp as the oil runs dry. That is your ego. It's fighting for every last drop of attention, every last bit of fuel. The Stoic training was the process of blowing out that lamp and learning to see in the dark. It wasn't about being happy, it was about being real. It was about standing on the bare earth and knowing exactly who you are when all the lights go out. And let's be honest, most of you are terrified of that darkness. You fill it with noise, with work, with growth. But the interrogation never stops. It's happening right now. Every choice you make, every reaction you have, is a testimony in the trial of your own character. And the verdict is usually guilty of being ordinary. If that offends you, good. Use that heat to burn away the rot. Because the world is about to get much, much colder. Think about the timing of your last failure. Not the one you posted about with a reflective caption, but the one that made your stomach turn into a knot of cold lead. You were standing in a room with white walls, or perhaps sitting in a car with the engine idling, staring at a steering wheel that felt like it belonged to a stranger. That was the interrogation beginning. Most of you failed it instantly. You reached for the phone. You swiped until the blue light numbed the edges of your shame. You traded your sovereignty for a dopamine hit from a stranger's curated life. The ancient Stoics would have looked at your digital tether and seen a leash. They would have seen a man who has surrendered his mind to a machine designed to harvest his attention like grain. Look at the rough texture of a wooden table. Feel the splinters. That is reality. It's unpolished. It's indifferent to your feelings. The mainstream narrative tells you that you are the protagonist of a grand epic, that the universe is conspiring to help you succeed if only you manifest hard enough. That isn't just a lie, it is a calculated insult to your intelligence. The truth is that the universe is a grinding gear of cause and effect, and you are the grit caught between the teeth. Zeno didn't teach his students to be happy, he taught them to be unbreakable. He would make them carry a pot of lentil soup through the crowded streets of Athens, a task so mundane and humiliating for a nobleman that it felt like a death sentence to the ego. Imagine the soup splashing onto your expensive leather shoes. Hear the laughter of the merchants. Feel the heat of the blush creeping up your neck. That heat is your pride dying, and it needs to die. I see the way people talk about stoicism today in air-conditioned offices and on glossy podcasts. They treat it like a productivity hack, a way to get a promotion or run a faster marathon. They've turned a blood-soaked philosophy of survival into a corporate wellness retreat. It's pathetic. I won't apologize for offending your sanitized version of self-help. If you respect that level of brutal honesty, then subscribe to this channel because we don't do comfort here. The interrogation room is still dark, and we have barely begun to talk about what you've hidden in the corners. Watch the way a blacksmith hammers a piece of glowing iron. The sparks fly. The metal screams under the weight of the strike. Each blow isn't an attack. It's an extraction of weakness. You think your stress is a burden. It's actually the hammer. But you're so busy complaining about the noise that you're failing to see the shape you're taking. Look at your hands right now. Are they soft? Are they the hands of someone who has only ever pushed buttons and scrolled through feeds? The Stoic interrogation demands to know what you have built with your time, not what you've planned, not what you've dreamed. What have you physically manifested in the face of a world that wants to reduce you to a consumer? The modern world is a soft cage, lined with velvet and high-speed internet. It's designed to make the interrogation unnecessary because it wants you to forget that there is a trial at all, but then the power goes out, or the bank account hits zero, or the doctor walks in with a folder and doesn't look you in the eye. Suddenly, the velvet is gone and you're sitting on the cold stone floor again. You look around for your followers, your titles, your digital armor, and find nothing but the sound of your own jagged breathing. Consider the anatomy of a breakdown. It starts in the eyes. They dart around, looking for an exit that doesn't exist. The sweat on the palms makes everything slip away. This is the moment Zeno was preparing his students for. He wanted them to be so familiar with the darkness that they could navigate it by touch alone. He wanted them to look at the loss of a child, the burning of a home, or the betrayal of a friend, and see it for what it is, a shift in the weather. Does that sound cold? It is. It's as cold as the marble of a tombstone, but it's also the only thing that is true. Everything else is just a story we tell to keep from screaming. Look at a coin. On one side, the face of a king or a president, power, authority, the illusion of control. Flip it over. There is a symbol of a dead era, or perhaps just a number. The coin is indifferent to which side faces up. You must become the coin. You must be the same substance whether you are being spent on a feast or buried in the dirt. The interrogation isn't about finding out if you're a good person, it's about finding out if you're a person at all, or just a collection of reactions tied together by a name. Most of you are just a series of conditioned responses. You eat when you're bored, you get angry when you're challenged, you hide when you're scared. There is no you there, just a machine running on outdated software. The process of waking up is the process of realizing you are the one holding the whip. You are the interrogator and the witness. Every time you choose the easy path, you are lying under oath. Every time you let your emotions dictate your actions, you are committing perjury in the court of your own soul. Stop looking for a mentor to save you. Stop looking for a book to give you the secret. The secret is the silence in the room when the questions get hard. It's the ability to sit in that silence without flinching. The floor is cold, the walls are closing in, the light is fading. Now tell me, when everything you think defines you is stripped away, when your job is gone, your body is failing, and your name is forgotten, what is the one thing that remains? If you don't have an answer, then you are still a prisoner of the dream, and the dream is about to become a nightmare. The world doesn't care about your potential. It only cares about your resolve. And right now, your resolve is as thin as the paper this script was never written on. It's time to stop pretending. It's time to face the interrogation. It's time to find out if there is anything inside you that the world can't break. Because the world is going to try. It's trying right now. Can you feel the pressure? Good. That's the only way you'll ever know you're still alive. The interrogation lamp above your head isn't just a prop, it's a sun that has set on a dozen civilizations before yours. You think your existential dread is a modern invention, a product of the digital age or the collapse of the middle class, but the dust settling on your skin has the same chemical signature as the ash that covered Pompeii. This cycle is a heavy, rusted gear that has been grinding bone into flour for millennia. We are currently watching the teeth of that gear slip. The walls of the room are sweating, beads of moisture tracing paths through the grime, mirroring the way borders dissolve when a culture loses its central nervous system. You are sitting in the same chair where the Roman citizen sat as the aqueducts stopped flowing. You are staring at the same shadow that flickered on the walls of Versailles before the gates were torn from their hinges. The tragedy isn't that everything is ending. The tragedy is that you were arrogant enough to believe you were the first person to witness the finish line. Your ancestors understood something you've spent your entire life trying to forget. Survival is a brutal physical transaction. They didn't have the luxury of finding themselves because they were too busy making sure the darkness didn't swallow their children. Now, you live in a world of soft edges and padded corners, where the most violent thing you experience is a notification on a glowing rectangle. This comfort has lobotomized your instincts. It has turned your resolve into a gelatinous mass of excuses. When the interrogation gets difficult, you reach for a distraction, a hit of dopamine to numb the fact that you have no internal architecture. You are a hollow structure held up by the pressure of the crowd. Take away the crowd, take away the validation of the faceless masses, and you collapse into a heap of unformed impulses. The historical record is littered with the remains of people who mistook their comfort for competence. They are the ones whose names are carved into monuments that no one can read anymore, buried under layers of sediment and indifference. The weight of this reality is too much for most to carry. They prefer the sanitized version of the story, the one where progress is a straight line and the future is always brighter than the past. But that is the comfort of the hospice patient. To truly see the mechanism, you have to be willing to look at the gore. You have to be willing to peel back the skin of the status quo and look at the pulsing raw nerves beneath. If you have the stomach for that kind of clarity, you belong here. Subscribe to Enter the Autopsy Room, where we dissect society's lies with the cold precision of a coroner who has seen it all before. We aren't here to give you hope. We are here to give you the blade. We are here to show you exactly where the rot started and how deep it goes. Most people would rather stay in the waiting room, flipping through magazines of pleasant distractions, but the interrogation room is the only place where the truth actually speaks. History is screaming at you, but you've been trained to hear it as white noise. You think the stability of your bank account or the strength of your Wi-Fi signal is a shield against the entropy of time. It's an insult to the intelligence of every person who ever watched their world burn to believe that your world is somehow fireproof. The smoke is already in the air. You can smell it in the way language is being degraded, in the way objective reality is being traded for subjective comfort. The structures are still standing, yes, but the mortar has turned to sand. A single tremor, a single moment of genuine pressure, and the whole facade slides into the dirt. This is the part of the cycle where the person becomes the reaction. You aren't acting, you are being acted upon. You are a leaf in a storm, convinced that you are choosing which way to blow. The architects of the current narrative want you to stay exactly where you are, compliant, confused, and comfortably numb. They want you to believe that the interrogation is over and that you won. But the silence in this room says otherwise. The pressure in your chest says otherwise. There is a growing movement to silence the voices that point out the cracks in the foundation, to erase the evidence that the cycle is repeating. You need to act before the window of transparency is welded shut by the hands of those who profit from your blindness. Subscribe before videos like this get sanitized or taken down by the systems that fear the very resolve we are trying to forge here. This isn't a game of numbers. It's a gathering of the few who still have eyes that can focus in the dark. Look at your hands. They are shaking, even if it's a vibration so small you can barely see it. That is the biological reality of your situation. Your body knows what your mind refuses to admit. The floor is gone. You are hanging by a thread of habit and social conditioning. The interrogation hasn't even reached its peak. The hard questions haven't even been asked yet. What will you do when the electricity fails for the last time? What will you say when the person across from you doesn't care about your feelings, your politics, or your potential? In that moment, you will realize that the only thing you ever truly owned was your ability to stand upright in the wind. And for most of you, that ability was traded away for a sense of security that was never real to begin with. The cycle doesn't care about your regrets. It doesn't pause for your realizations. It simply moves on to the next generation of victims who think they are the masters of their own destiny. The light in this room is flickering now. The power is fluctuating. The air is getting thinner, and the exit is a door that only opens once you've admitted who you really are. Not the version you post online, not the version you tell your parents. The raw, terrified animal core of you, that is the only thing that survives the fire. Everything else, the titles, the possessions, the carefully curated personality, is just fuel. You've spent so much time building a life that you forgot to build a self. And now, the bill is due. History is reaching out its hand to collect, and you are standing there with empty pockets. Look at the clock on your wall or the tiny numbers in the corner of your screen. Take a long, hard look. When this video started, those numbers were different. You've just watched several minutes of your life vanish into the void. They are gone forever. You didn't spend them, you let them be taken. While you were listening to the sound of my voice, the world moved one step closer to its inevitable conclusion, and you are one step closer to the end of your own personal timeline. The interrogation is over for now, but the silence that follows is far more dangerous. You are back in the dream, but the walls are thinner than they were 10 minutes ago.